So welcome, Shiri. I'm so happy to have you here today. Welcome to the Psychedelic Mom podcast.
Yes, psychedelic moms for the win.
That's right. And you, I know, are a mother of maybe a daughter who's young, maybe two?
She's 4 now.
Four. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah,
Wow. Wow.
yeah.
So could you tell us a little bit about your journey? I know you are a psychedelic integration coach and an entrepreneur and a mom. So we have some similarities, but I'd love to hear kind of your journey and who you are.
Yeah, well, broadly, who I am is first and foremost an artist and a creator, and a spirit and a human experience that is here to actualize itself and reach my fullest expression in this lifetime while spreading compassion and kindness and inspiring others. And in the roles that I am fulfilling right now, of course, the first one is being a mother to a child, which is my greatest creation, a wife and a daughter and a sister. And to my professional audience, I'm known as a teacher and a road paver and a trailblazer. As when I got started to fulfill my professional roles about 2015, is when I began to I really decided that I'm here to currently support psychedelic healing. And that's when I decided to re-enroll back in school to get my master's in spiritual psychology and with a focus on psychedelic integration therapy. And while I was in school, just kind of putting out to everyone I met that this is what I'm here to do and this is my path, then a lot of opportunities started coming my way. And along the way, I began to activate community in Los Angeles. One of the co-founders of one of the largest integration communities in the world, Psychedelic Integration Los Angeles, which literally started in the back of a spiritual store when we created integration circles for the community. And now it's a registered nonprofit. And then, of course, the other professional offerings that I have is a coach and as an online entrepreneur. So my toes are dipped in many pools, but my journey literally, if I could sum it up just in one sentence for you, is just grassroots community activism as a psychedelic user that did not have community or support. So I just initiated those things for myself and for the community. And here we are later. 6 years
Amazing.
later. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. And I think a lot of people who are new to psychedelics and enter have a very similar experience. I mean, I remember when I entered, there was no community and a bit of a similar path, started studying psychedelic integration and creating circles in Boston and in Rhode Island because it was like, where are the others? Um,
Yeah.
and then also doing the integration while you're going through this life altering experience of the use of psychedelics.
Mhm.
I read a little bit about your experience. I loved reading that it was at the Lana Del Rey concert.
Oh yeah.
So, do you want to speak of that? Because that seems to have been a real catalyst point for you.
It was the catalyst point for me. I would say the catalyst point. Again, I was a person that back then, this was 2014, was engaging with psychedelics in the transformational festivals that I used to attend, and which we know that mind altering substances are a big part of that culture. And I engaged with MDMA on that evening, and back then I literally had no concept, no idea of what setting was, dosage, none of the educational structures that I speak to today. And someone just handed me a bag and said, "Here you go, have fun." And I just dumped the whole thing in a bottle of water, and not knowing how much exactly was in there. From what I can maybe articulate or guesstimate now, I believe it was the equivalent of 2 or 3 full doses of MDMA, which is a lot. And I just went off into the night. I was at Coachella back then. This was the only time I went to Coachella. My friends went to another stage. I decided to go see Lana Del Rey, which I really loved at the time. And under that desert sky and the palm trees and listening to the singer's ethereal voice that was just undulating with an ocean of fans. And um, it was one of the most heart-opening, connecting experiences I've had in my life.
Mhm.
And obviously, it left a big impact on me as the next morning we drove back home, and I was crying the whole way home of gratitude, of being invited to witness the how interconnected the interbeing that we have in humanity, even amongst like tens of thousands of people that were supposedly strangers to each other. But it's like I'd been invited to view, like to look beyond the veil that we're all living in, and I could never unsee what I saw. And I knew right there that I need to support that and do what I can in hopes of helping others see beyond the veil as I was shown.
Wow. So you were
So
really experiencing kind of the interbeingness, like fully experiencing that. It sounds like, and MDMA being an empathogen, just the deep love for all humanity. Is that kind of what you were experiencing?
the connection, the intimacy, the softness. I remember there was like a big bodyguard next to me trying to like bring order to all the fans. And it's like I didn't even have to speak in words. I just had to touch him so it would get out of the way. And he just moved. It was just very, very soft. Um, Being able to communicate without saying any words and just communicating through the language of the heart has really impacted me. And it was a very feminine experience. And Lana Del Rey is also very much known for her feminine archetype. So I wonder if that
Hmm.
also had something to do with it. But anyhow, it was definitely a turning point for me. And I feel like was a real aligner on my path to where I am today.
Wow. And so then where did you go from there as far as psychedelics? Just kind of on a path of real experimentation for a while?
Well, I was experimenting back then, again, just in a more novice, kind of like innocent childlike way, what some people call recreational way. And from that moment, it was again like an opening into gain a new awareness on what these substances can induce. And then for the next few months, actually, I was again becoming more aware and doing a little bit more study on psychedelic therapy, but still not making any moves towards that. It was just more of an understanding of, oh, actually these substances have a whole other potential that I wasn't even aware of. um, but I still wasn't geared towards that profession. It was more of an awareness. But what happened within the next 6 months of other things that, other synchronicities, as some people might call them, right? I was having relationship issues with my current boyfriend, my then boyfriend, went through a really traumatic breakup, got into a really heavy episode of depression, began meditating for the first time in my life just to try to deal with the meditation, began listening to a lot of Marianne Williamson's workshops, to gain more spiritual study. So my spiritual study that's when I can say that's when I got started with that. And and then within 2 or 3 months, a few other events happened that just threw me back into school, and that I decided that this is the way. But it was more of an opener
Mhm.
to again to align with a spiritual path, and then within 6 months, I got on the psychedelic therapy track.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then it sounds like through that path, you, as sometimes happens with the psychedelics, encountered some harder things, maybe some generational trauma, some family stuff. Is that true?
Oh, of course, 100%. I don't really know anyone that hasn't encountered any of that. I feel like one of the greatest challenges that we do have as psychedelic professionals is actually to the educational aspect of the work that we do to undo the damage of the war on drugs. So one of them being that these substances are typically used only for recreation. And I use that word tongue in cheek, recreation, but it's really recreation. We get to recreate ourselves, right? So what the cultural narrative of the war on drugs is recreation. People only want to play. People only want to tune in, drop out. They only want to get high. They want to check out of this world, and makes it seem like very irresponsible. And actually, what I found, as many others have, that actually it helps us attune to such deep parts of our psyche, and then we encounter all of the history of who we are, or the history as a collective, our intergenerational and lineage path, all the stories and memories that are stored within our psyche. And of course, it can be illuminated in beautiful and playful ways. But when you encounter this information is very serious, actually, and can have really dire implication on people that are using these substances, in the sense of meeting and facing all of these, again, memories and traumas and repressed feelings and unfelt emotions. So there's a lot of pretty serious psychological work that people typically understand that they have to do when they enter this modality.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think sometimes in that recreational, you might not quite be ready to leap into that, but it is part of it. It is an aspect of using psychedelics to encounter that shadow side of our culture and our families. For you, kind of specifically, what was your journey in that?
Yeah. So my journey, so again, as mentioned, I began using them in the transformational festival scene, and then, as mentioned, I realized that they had more therapeutic potential. Began studying on that, and absolutely began using them with the intention of utilizing them for psycho-spiritual growth, psychological and spiritual illumination. I'm a daughter to an immigrant family. I moved to the US when I was 11. My parents themselves are immigrants. We had a lot of adversity in relating to our immigration journey, lots of trauma. And I was, as mentioned, having relationship issues and insecurity and lack of confidence and body image, and just a lot mental health management, and just really struggling. I was in my late 30s, and knew in my heart of hearts that I wasn't even close to fulfilling my potential. But I also felt very stuck in my life because of the circumstance that I'd grown into, and felt like this could be my way out of the circumstance. And so I used it in that way, as my way out of the circumstance. So for me, also as a person that is really interested in what people call doing the work and personal development, I've always had an affinity for that. So for me, it was another tool in that realm that really fascinated me. And of course, it's so different from anything else that it was really just a no-brainer to get into that as soon as I, was introduced to it. So yeah, I knew that I was, using them for quote unquote doing the work purposes, and it absolutely was that. And it took me way deeper than I ever thought that a person can ever go on their journey. I really had no idea what I was getting to be honest.
Yeah, I had a
Yeah.
similar situation. I think I was similar to you, just a seeker and really on a spiritual path of meditation, and really curious of whether psychedelics could give me access to the spiritual beyond what I felt I already had in my practices. And, then it opens up
Yeah.
everything, the yes to that question, but also the yes to the things hidden and the darker sides and the shadow and the real, like as you said, what gets called in the field of the real work.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, in your process, obviously you've experienced a lot of the medicines. Was there a particular medicine that you felt, wow, if I had to say the medicine that kind of helped me the most in processing some of that familial, cultural, social trauma, would you say there was a medicine for you?
There was. First off, anything that I've used, and I've used mainly the what we call the popular, more common psychedelics of today's era. So we're talking about MDMA, LSD, um, ayahuasca, and psilocybin mushrooms and cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
And I have experimented, of course, with other ones as well, like DMT, NN-DMT, 5-MeO DMT, some of the other compounds like 2CB and also San Pedro. And so I have experienced those as well, but I've primarily stuck with the first five that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And they each, in their own way, have supported me and have illuminated different aspects of um, of my being and my journey. And I actually like to differentiate them and personify them. So to me, they're each different teachers with different personalities, with different styles of teaching, and 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 I relate to them in a very specific way.
Mm-hmm.
So they've all been very useful in that regard. But to answer your question, the one that is really I've had a really deep connection with, still do, even though it's been a long time since I've sat with this medicine, is ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm.
So I've felt from the beginning a connection to this plant medicine. It is known to be more of like a mother or grandmother archetype. And as a person that's always been fascinated with the mother archetype in the collective, the mother matrix, the mother complex, as a person that studies depth psychologist, this is definitely an archetype that I've been fascinated with through my years. So it was really fascinating to explore that complex and relationship through that medicine. And of course, like lots of trauma has been revealed through it. Um, uh, since this is a psychedelic mom podcast,
Yeah.
I want to speak to how this particular medicine actually, I feel, has prepared me for motherhood and also helped me get pregnant.
Yeah, I would love to hear that.
Yeah. So it was, let's see. So I began using ayahuasca, engaging with ayahuasca. I think it was 2016, I believe, or 15. And at the time I was single. I was, again, just getting on my path of engaging with these medicines. I was very much praying to find my soulmate. And my first journey was made clear to me. And I refrain from saying the medicine told me, because I don't believe that the medicine tells us anything. It's more of a magnifying glass into our own choir of our psyche and our own voices. So a voice within me was clarified in our first interaction, saying that you continue on this path, your soulmate is coming, it's all good, but you're on the right track. And a few ceremonies later, actually, I will say that I think it was even just 2 ceremonies later. By the next ceremony, actually, I already met that soulmate, which was really interesting.
That's amazing.
Which today is my husband, actually, when we got married within
Amazing.
6 months. Yeah.
Wow.
And the father of my child. So that was really neat. But moving forward, a few ceremonies later, I think it was ceremony number 8. It was a New Year's Eve ceremony a year or two later. And again, usually I'm very sensitive to these medicines and typically tend to go very deep in that process. And I remember sitting there in the dark, in a container that I feel very safe with, someone that I've sat with quite a few times and highly respect. And seeing that the medicine was working on my womb, working on clearing my womb space and my gut, and letting me know that it is working on clearing the way for to be able to contain a child and grow a child in that space. So that was made very clear. And of course, in that ceremony, I worked on, many other um, issues that I feel are pretty common in this work. So like I worked on shame, but that particular journey was very much, it was like a physical therapy session. So it literally felt as if I had a body worker standing over me, putting their hands on my body, shaking me, moving me, manipulating my body, in weird contortions to allow the energy to flow out and to clear out any toxins and negativity from my body. And that was just incredible. I'll never forget that. And I just want to mention that also when I got pregnant, I got pregnant and I had my child when I was 3 months shy from the age of 40. So I got pregnant when I was 39.
Yeah.
And I got pregnant on the first try.
Wow.
And my pregnancy was one of my doctors called it a unicorn pregnancy. So I got pregnant without any issues, knock on wood, no health issues throughout the pregnancy, and also was able to deliver naturally at a natural birth center without any medical intervention. And
amazing.
Yeah.
That's really amazing.
Yeah. And this is, of course, without also getting into, all the ways that she's prepared me to be a mother. This is literally what I just shared was literally just on the physical aspect of preparing the body for pregnancy. But there's a lot more to it in terms of the psychological preparation as well.
Did you feel at all, because one of the things, again, we're exploring on the Psychedelic Mom podcast is how sacred plant medicines and psychedelics can, number one, prepare us for being mothers, but also highlight the ways in which our family systems and structures haven't worked. And to, as mothers and fathers, to kind of shine the light on those within ourselves, do our deep healing work so that we can create healthier communities, but families and children, and kind of change the cycles that have done harm.
Yes.
Yeah. Did she show you any of that in your kind of personal scope of any mother-daughter stuff? Or
100%. Again, I've been swirling in the mother complex vortex for many years prior to meeting ayahuasca. And I think it's worth mentioning that I specifically intentioned while I was pregnant to use plant medicines in my pregnancy, specifically with the purpose of nourishing my child with the wisdom of these plant medicines. So this is a practice that is less common in the United States, but is more, I chose to follow more of ancient cultures of in South America, where they utilize plant medicines in pregnancy and childbirth. For the record, I also just want to put out there that, of course, this is not any medical advice, and there is no known research, at least that we know of, that speaks to utilizing psychedelics in pregnancy. So I'm not advising anyone on doing that, but I did make that choice for myself, and I created a few videos on this when I was pregnant, and put them out on YouTube, and just sharing my experience and what that was like. So I also sat with ayahuasca while I was pregnant. Amazing. Full ceremonies,
what
full
was that
doses.
Like? I can't even imagine what that was like.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm not the first to do this. Women do this all the time. Again, in the indigenous cultures, and for me, it was important to follow their footsteps, and it was very special. It was an opportunity, first of all, to commune and put my faith and my trust in the plant consciousness world that I so believe in, and literally in many aspects, really, I feel like owe it my life. So I was presenting, offering my child to the medicine. That's what it felt like.
Amazing.
And kept receiving affirmations. I mean, I have to say, it's not that I did this without any fear. I was nervous. But I kept receiving affirmations in the medicine, and again, in the very safe container that I was in, that the child is safe, I have nothing to worry about. This was affirmed to me over and over again in the ceremony. And I was able to work through understanding what my role is for her, what was lacking in my relationship with my mother as a child, what are the ways that I can break that link, and the way that I was raised and what motherhood was modeled to me, and take a stand on modeling a motherhood that I feel more congruent with, learning how to speak up for my child, learning how to advocate for her. Those were all things that I had to learn how to do myself, and Mother Ayahuasca taught me that. So it
Amazing.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely,
Beautiful.
completely made me a better parent in every single way. And this is just nuggets, and there's so much more.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, in each journey, it's a lifetime of wisdom and
yeah,
more. Yes, and like you said, it's new to us in the Western culture, this idea. But when you think of like the Bwiti tribe and down in the jungle, even if a parent brings their baby to a ceremony, they're giving them a
yeah,
little of the medicine. You know,
yes.
it's very much a part of everything.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, they're included in the community. And I actually did bring my daughter also when she was 6 months. I brought her to ceremony too. I felt like I wanted to do that as well. And it was amazing. And again, while she was there, and the music, there were musicians and drums and kind of a racket at a certain point. And I was a little nervous, 6-month-old baby sleeping in the ceremony. And again, received an affirmation that she's actually going through her own ceremony right now. And at the end of the day, I don't know if any of this, what is true, what is real, but for me, it felt very right in the moment. I did refrain from moving forward without making that a practice, just because logistically it was so
Yeah.
much, like packing up a baby and myself for weekend ceremony and driving for 2 hours. It was just too much. So I stopped doing that, but
So
we did
now,
it.
would you say definitely psychedelics have informed you on on motherhood and
Oh,
probably changed so many aspects of like what your maybe original ideas of spirituality and God were? Would you say that looking back to then and now, you have a particular philosophy or spirituality that has been kind of gifted and taught to you through plant medicines?
mm, yes. Let me see if I can boil it down. So I was born into the Jewish faith. I was raised Jewish, and I come from a religious Orthodox family. So I was raised to believe in a God. And at the same time, it was, was an indoctrination into a very specific um, narrative that I can't really say that I could ever fully stand behind. Again, I just was following and modeling that was provided to me by my family and my culture. And I actually, even as a religious Jew, traditionally religious Jew, the first time that I ever actually felt like I believe in a God or understand that there is a higher power and really fully have witnessed it and be connected with it was after I started using psychoactive substances. And in some ways, I feel like I've become way more religious than I ever was before. And that's for me, that's a fact. I do feel more religious, and I feel like I'm actually more religious than my family in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like I do have a direct channel to this higher power, and as part of my daily ritual, I attempt to practice communing with this higher power daily. Again, to the best of my ability. Don't say that I do it every day, but I try to. And the spirituality that I follow now, is Ram Dass said, is that everyone is God in drag. Really approach everyone as if they're God in drag, as if we're all fragments of the same source. As we all come from the same family. We're all the human race. No, there's not many races, but just one human race. I do tend to follow Buddhism philosophy now more than any other type of philosophy. because I do find that it's very closely aligned to psychedelic wisdom. So I attempt to practice Buddhism now more than any other organized religion, but I kind of do my own thing. But yeah, absolutely, psychedelics have provided again that just not just a cognitive understanding, but more of a feeling and seeing and participating in the this spirituality over time and spiritual culture.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
like that direct experience and does shift kind of what the belief system is as you begin to experience that and experience even other beings, people, humans in a journey because you begin to look at
Right.
them differently. And I love that Ram Dass quote also where he says, we're all just walking each other home.
Yeah.
And, you know, in taking even that quote of Ram Dass of we're all just walking each other home, it sounds like then you've taken some of the wisdom and what you learned, probably your ups and downs in medicine, as far as like there wasn't much integration when you were doing medicine. Integration was probably a new topic. So that idea of walking each other home, and then you start an integration practice. And I'm curious, in the integration that you teach, in the programs that you teach, was that from your own process mostly?
100% for my own process.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I committed to the path of integration, again back in 2015, that was the first time that I've heard of that term I believe it was at a plant medicine conference, and that's when I decided to commit myself to that because I heard that term, I understood why it was needed, but I also saw that there wasn't much being offered in that arena. So I felt like this was my path to serve and what where I wanted to contribute the most. And because back then we didn't have, aside from there were very specific organizations that already were pioneering the integration field. So Dr. Susanna Bustos, who that's where I heard the term integration at that conference, the organization ERIE from San Francisco, that I think they were also the first community organization that specifically focused on integration. And other than that, not much else. So when I wrote my master's thesis on integration, it was more of doing a lot of research to try and make sense of this word and bring more context to it. So I learned from Jungian psychology, depth psychology, transpersonal psychology, humanistic. Again, learning from my own field work, learning a lot of tips from my own work, from the medicines that I was communing with, listening and introspecting on my own process and kind of seeing what worked, what doesn't work, taking notes on my own journey. And of course, learning from the other research like MAPS that we're doing the MDMA clinical trials, MDMA assisted psychotherapy clinical trials and their protocol, and basically taking in as much information as I could while developing and interpreting my own experience, which I think that's really the word I am looking for, my own interpretation of my own subjective experience as a person that was attempting to integrate her um, peak experiences and translating that and putting them into methodology. So this is what I've always been obsessed with, is creating methodology around the ineffable.
Did you feel like you had a support in that process at all? Were you working with someone to do integration? Was there anybody at that time that was
Yes.
supporting you in the path? Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. So my first proper integration coach at the time was Daniel McQueen from Medicinal Mindfulness, who I started working with privately, and just really appreciated him as a teacher. He's definitely a pioneer in the field of psychedelic education. And in addition to working with Daniel, I worked long term for many years with a Jungian analyst who was psychedelic knowledgeable, experienced, and friendly. So that was the framework that I was really interested in, and I worked with him for quite a few years.
Yeah, amazing.
Yes.
Sometimes I just think, because I've had the same experience of working with Dr. Dan Engel and people within that integration field, but I can't imagine at times like not having that kind of support. And
Yeah, I think integration can be, it's like the integration I feel is worth mentioning, can be beneficial in different ways in different contexts.
mm-hmm,
So for example, the community support, the community aspect of integration, some people dismiss it. I've heard other professionals dismiss it as not being real integration support and people can't get the support that they need. But I respectfully decline that opinion and disagree with it. I actually feel like the community element is extremely important, because without having without seeing yourself as part of a greater whole within your contextual environment, then you can do all the integration work you want, but in that way you're isolated from your community and you're kind of like you're living in a vacuum.
mm-hmm.
Whereas when you're integrating alongside a community, you're integrating into your society, into your people, into your neighborhood, and you're participating in the collective weaving of reality that we're all part of. So I do feel the community aspect is super important. And I mean, to be very frank, I do have, I'm an integration professional,
Mm-hmm.
and I absolutely feel like having a professional by your side can expedite the integration process, make it a lot smoother, help you have a set of what's the word I'm looking for?
Tools and practices.
Tools and practices, yes, and
Mm-hmm.
techniques, but more of an objective set
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
eyes
Yep.
that will be able to, sometimes when we're in the process, we can't really see what is truly happening. We're kind of hyper focused on going through it, and we can't necessarily see the bigger picture. So having a professional that can speak to the blind spots, can hold the light when it gets really dark, can again provide more context, is irreplaceable in my opinion.
Yeah,
And
I agree. And I agree
yeah,
with the community aspect too. I think that we heal within relationship. So, like you said, we
exactly.
can be an island healing, but we really heal also to be in community and in community.
Right.
But I'd love to hear about kind of the modalities that you felt like really supported you while you were going through this integration process and how you share those and now teach those.
Yeah, thank you. So, as mentioned, the Jungian psychology and analysis has been extremely useful for me. I'm also trained in that realm. I did feel like when I learned about Jungian psychology, I felt like it was the roadmap and the language that for psychedelic integration. So for me, I follow that. Excuse me. I incorporate that theory into and base my integration philosophy on that. For me, it's been really useful. So Jungian psychology has been really useful. And also another roadmap that was really helpful for me to develop my own theory was when I was in therapy school. I actually also signed up to do Being True to You's coaching program with
Mhm.
Dan Adamson, which I know Dr. Don Engel is also part of. And Deanne, I think she was the first in our field to offer an integration support program.
Mhm.
And I signed up to that to get more psychedelic specific training. And it was the first time that I actually saw integration in a more methodological way
Mhm.
of preparation, navigation, integration. So that roadmap was really useful for me, and to also gain more confidence and in the way that I speak to this modality. And then from there, the sky was the limit. I just, kind of hit the ground running and started developing my own protocols, again mostly based on my own experience and working with clients and working with on myself and having that community pioneering aspect of it, which where I got to interact with hundreds and thousands of people, sitting with them in circles, create events, create services,
Mhm.
ayahuasca support group, integration intensive, educational classes, bigger seminars. So, it kind of just kind of listening to the community and seeing what was needed and continuing to develop my theory while I was communing with my people.
Amazing.
Um, yeah. But now, so as mentioned, I'm obsessed with methods and formulas.
Yeah.
So I've developed, like for me, integration is very nuanced. And with that, just for my obsession with trying to bring language to the unconscious, which is this is what who I am. I'm a poet of the unconscious. I'm here to express the unconscious, and I'm obsessed with expressing it verbally. I'm a very verbal language magic person. So I've developed my own philosophy, my own method called the Psych Soul method, which it includes an integration protocol and psychedelic therapy protocol based rolled into one. It incorporates the elements of psychedelic education, soul retrieval, shadow work, of course, which I call disintegration, and life optimization. So there is an arc that is and a flow that I've also created that has different stages to the arc of integration, and the client ebbs and flows through this specific arc. And what is unique to my method is that we visit different topics that I find are very common. And even though everyone goes through their very own unique integration process, however, I have seen that there are specific topics that are very common, and most people do circle through them when they use psychedelics for therapy. So there are weekly themes that we go through, and then we work through them in very deep ways. And then I just kind of customize a journey to the client, and they just follow the protocol. And typically within 6 months, they're at a such different place. Like literally, I've had people, my private coaching clients have told me that even though they sign up to work with me for my integration coaching skills, and they intend on using psychedelics in this journey because they believe that I can support them through that, even though I don't provide psychedelic therapy, I just provide the framework. They end up not even using psychedelics at all because they say that the work with me, that I'm the psychedelic, that I'm so illuminating, and our interactions are so illuminating. And again, the unconscious speaks so clearly through our interactions that they don't even need to use substances, which is really interesting.
That is amazing. Well, there is that phrase
Yeah.
in medicine work, right? You become the medicine. And I think it can be very true, and I think it sounds your process and your the way you set that up is actually fascinating. The different ways that you bring people, and finally, kind of at that end of optimization. It's
Yeah.
almost like that full circle of becoming whole, an entire process. Wow.
Although, that is, thank you. And I just want to state that integration is a lifelong process. You cannot begin and finish integrating within one session, before one session, after your journey. And to be very, like honest as a professional, if any coach tells you that you're going to do your integration work within 2 sessions after your journey and be done with it, then please move on to your next coach, because integration is an awareness and mindfulness practice of who you are and who you continue to become, who you choose to become, actively participating in your own creation forever.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
yeah,
I love
and
that.
it's,
Because I did Being True to You as well, and I'm an
yeah,
integration coach similarly, and advise people on medicine and things like that. And I think this model, whoever started the model of like 2 calls before medicine and 2 calls after, I
yeah.
mean, it just doesn't support someone through the process. And I think what you said is so true. Integration is life. It's like a lifelong process, because really, it really is that returning to the truth of who we are, the remembering, the reclaiming parts of ourselves, coming into that sovereign being. And that doesn't happen in a couple of phone calls or through psychedelics necessarily. Psychedelics can be part of that path. So, one of the things that I'd love to talk about too is you wrote recently I don't know if it was a Facebook post or an article, but was called Dying to Do the Work: How Psychedelics Shattered My Ego and My Mental Health. I mean, I just pulled out a couple of things that were in there. So I just want to say those and then have you talk about them a little bit. And one was that psychedelics did not heal my depression, PTSD, ADHD, my anxiety, and my bipolar spectrum symptoms. Rather, it exacerbated these illnesses while inducing an advanced level of tribulation.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that I really want to highlight, a line that also stuck out to me, well, before I even say that one, is just this idea of like you're picking off the sequins of the glitz and glitter almost of the psychedelic renaissance fanfare of this idea that it is the be all, end all, cure all. And that some of what you wrote about is really, I think, an important conversation. Then you had this comment, the self-proclaimed matriarchy of psychedelic integration is naked.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the nakedness that you revealed, kind of becoming naked in that article that you wrote. Can you tell us a little bit about that article and how that really has been part of your process?
Yeah, for sure. So I don't think anyone, I mean, certainly myself, when I wrote that piece, I don't think I myself ever expected myself as the person that's known as the psychedelic integration coach to get to a place where it felt like I've been and probably in the most disintegrated state of my life because of my psychedelic use. So for me to write that piece was definitely, it was almost like witnessing myself from another dimension and speaking to another fragment of myself that's inhabiting a different reality. And of course, my role as a coach, which is like its all other persona. So it was like pulling the different aspects of my personality and my existence and calling bullshit on the whole thing.
Yeah. Pretty brave.
Uh,
Pretty
yeah,
brave and vulnerable.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yes. And I will be the first to say that, as someone that has been, again, I'm known as a person that's been pioneering the field, right? When I got started, there were no psychedelic integration coaches. There weren't. And for me, it was even hard to find proper integration support because there were so few people that were doing this work. So literally, as a psychedelic user, I feel like I had to figure out a lot of it on my own. And my support that I've created for myself. And I don't know if anyone who can hear us on the podcast, they don't see me like going like,
Air quotes.
doing little air quotes with my hands, but my best defense against everything that was happening was to try to articulate my journey as much as possible and be transparent about the process so people can get a glimpse into the integration process, get a window into it through me, even if we don't exactly know what it means yet, even if we don't have theory or again methods to articulate exactly what is happening because it's such a new field, but here is what it can look like. And this is kind of what I've been aiming to do from the get-go. Here's what it can look like. And I've said from the beginning, I'm a psychedelic user. I'm literally, I come from the people and I am the people, and I'm just trying to share what I'm learning. And the reality was at a certain point last year in 2021, which was an extremely expansive year for me, very expansive for my business as an entrepreneur. And again, as a person that has made the journey from having these tiny integration circles in the back of a spiritual store and everything for free or by donation to my current status of founded 5 psychedelic organizations and businesses and I charge 5 figures for some of my programs, my training programs. So I've made that entire journey as an entrepreneur, and 2021 has been extremely expansive and also has introduced a whole other range of issues and challenges that I wasn't prepared for, both as a psychedelic user and an entrepreneur. Because again, I am not a business person. I just began encountering a lot of, as my business naturally grew, began experiencing a lot of a huge growth curve with the growth of my business. And I was not prepared for these challenges, and began facing for the first time in my life that actually, these symptoms that I'm experiencing, the exhaustion, the sleepless nights, the stress, the low mood, the not having any patience for anyone, the crying spells, the sometimes like mania. That's what it felt like, just like working into the night on trying to get my tasks done, isolating myself from other people because I literally had no time to care for myself. And it got to a point where I just kind of had to like just stop and take a look at, the reality that I've created for myself, even though it was in the name of, the psychedelic mission to help this, contribute to the psychedelic renaissance, to mentor others, to whatever that mission was, right? Whatever that delusional mission was, it was time to actually look at what my life actually looked like, the real life person
The
that
day to
exists in this,
day,
the
kind of
day
the
to
day
day
to
in
day
this
of what's
dimension.
happening. What am I doing?
Exactly. And I'm a mother and a wife, and there were just so many, just a lot of problems being illuminated to me from every aspect of my life, and I was just not doing well, and it was hard to face that reality, and I
Was
had
there
to,
a particular
yeah.
moment? Was there kind of like a real catalyst to that looking? Was there a bad day, a bad week? Was it just a progressive low? What was the real like moment that you just thought, okay, I'm disconnected. My mood isn't where I want it to be. This expansiveness that I felt in a psychedelic experience and wanted to bring forth isn't there. Like, was there a particular kind of moment that was like, okay, I really need to stop and look
Yeah.
at this?
There were a few particular events, but without getting into too many details, I just felt that I was just on the cusp of a nervous breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
I was having a hard time sleeping at night. I was still a mother to a young child, and honestly, myself being an activist and a creator, that challenge in itself of, making the journey from being a visionary to motherhood was a huge slap in the face. That one that still, even when at the time my daughter was 2 or 3 years old, I was still learning how to be a mom while upholding the operations that I've created for myself. So it was a huge transition. And I just, to answer your question, just how did I come to see it? Yeah, it was really hard to focus. I was crying all the time. I wasn't sleeping well. I couldn't feel like I could be present with my child. My relationships were falling apart. I was always angry and depressed and low, and I just wasn't healthy. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
healthy. I felt like all I wanted to do was just check myself into an institution and go crazy in there in peace, just so I can have some peace and quiet from all the stressors that I was carrying. So that was definitely a red flag, and we had to make some really big decisions in the family to change that. And the best decision I made
Mm-hmm.
was to stop using psychedelics.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so when was this?
So the decision to cut my use with psychedelics was, let's see, in October of 2021, which is about 6 months ago. I was using ketamine at the beginning, to use ketamine more at the time, and there were a couple of journeys where it was just communicated to me. There is not, you don't need any more information. You have all the information and awareness that anyone could ever have. But what are you actually doing with instead of spending your time on sitting in ceremony, how about you spend your time taking good care of yourself? Go take a walk outside, get a massage, go take a nap. Like, you're exhausted. You're exhausted. take a nap.
So the
So
integration kind of frameworks and modalities that you had put together and were teaching,
yeah.
were you not practicing them?
No, I didn't have time to
Yeah.
practice them. Exactly. That was exactly it. That I
Yeah.
got to a point where I was so overworked and burnt out from working so much, and that I literally did not have time, or did not prioritize rather
Hmm.
time to practice my own integration method. I even wrote about that. I said, I'm not even practicing my own integration method. Like, what have I come to? What have I been reduced to? So that was a huge illuminating moment of, this is, I'm a complete imposter. How can I teach this when I don't even practice what I teach?
And so since then, thank you for sharing that. It really
Yeah.
is like beautiful and vulnerable and hard and all of it. Um, so I imagine you slowly started making decisions to put all those practices that you knew deep down in your soul were what you needed into your life. How was that process, and where do you feel you are kind of today in, has it felt good to be kind of away from psychedelics and kind of just be doing, taking a nap when you need a nap, and the
Yeah.
self-care and self-love that
Yeah.
maybe was got lost in the business?
Yeah. Learning how to prioritize my well-being was a learning curve as well. However, since at that time we also left Los Angeles to Costa Rica, for this exact reason, is just we felt that we weren't in a supportive environment, and we wanted to be closer to nature and have more peace and more time to care for ourselves, both my husband and I. So that happened hand in hand. And being here, and this is where I'm speaking from right now, we live a block away from the beach. And definitely now I share with my audience that much of my work now is actually like half my day spent on my integration work, less on my day-to-day business stuff and the tasks. I mean, that definitely has to get done. And I know that I need time by the beach every day. And I know that I need a massage at least once a week. And I know that I need my prayer and my reading every morning and night. So there are some things that are non-negotiable for me at this point. But let me tell you, like you mentioned, like a journey of self-love, that's exactly what integration is. It's a
Mm-hmm.
journey of acknowledging exactly who you are, what your unique needs are. And if I'm acknowledging that, I'm a person that has all these issues that I'm working with, whatever they are, my circumstance, my personality, my complexities, my body's needs. I'm a very specific person, and if it takes this much time to care and honor this person, then this is what I must do,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise nothing else that I do is going to be worth my time or really serve anyone. It's really, first and foremost, the journey of integration is honoring yourself and your needs, and then everything else comes second. So it definitely shifted back to that alignment, and that remembrance, and that was really one of the best things that I could have ever done for myself and my family, for sure.
Amazing. I mean, you
Yeah.
look beautiful and relaxed
Thank you.
and very much so grounded. So I'm glad in that journey for you to Costa Rica and the beach time. And, it's interesting you're bringing this up because similarly, I started off as an optimized coach and was
Mm.
trained through this guy, Brian Johnson, and it had these, what you just said, non negotiables. And every morning I had these non negotiables, which were this high intensity workout,
Yeah.
meditation, journaling. I saw the sunrise every day for probably 1,000 days in a row. It would
Mm.
yank me out of bed wherever I was. And I had these like AM and PM, I called them my non negotiables. It was my morning juice, and I had this whole routine. And it was very interesting because COVID kind of did something to them. My non
Yeah.
negotiables became all negotiable.
Yeah.
And it was just recently when I was doing some work thinking, wait a second, similar, like, where are my non negotiables? Where are the things that I actually knew for years were the things that were my self love, my self care, my joy, and just began that practice to go back to these daily practices that really ground me in myself, who I am, my own spirituality. So I love that you speak on that, and that psychedelics, there is a time to at times step away and
Yeah.
integrate all those journeys.
Well, integration is not about integration. Sorry,
Mm-hmm.
but integration is not about integrating psychedelic substance use into your life. It's about having right relationship with this modality. And this is the difference.
I
It's
love that.
about the relationship. And relationships change. Relationships are dynamic. Sometimes you may feel a heightened intimacy and you're able to go all in. And other times you see that actually that may destabilize you and you need to step back and individuate yourself. So, and another thing about integration is that integration is all about relationships. Our life is about relationships. It's about a relationship to others, relationship to the earth, relationship to the clothes we wear, relationship to our car, relationship to anything. And when we look at these relationships and the context, so it's not about the other or the content, it's about the context. It's about what is weaved and how you relate to others. And this is one tip that I want to give anyone who's listening is when you aim to integrate your experiences, you always want to look at the relationship to your experience. And in that way, you're not going to be hinging on, oh, what insight did I see? Where are the visions? Where are the colors? I didn't see anything. It's actually more about how you feel about it than the content or the insight itself. So this is just one tip I want to leave everyone with. And yeah, so right relationship. And only you know you're the one that gets us decide what's the right relationship for you based on your own well-being, not anyone else's.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how would you say that this process that you've been in leaving, I think were you in LA or California?
Yes. Los Angeles.
To go to Costa Rica. How are you feeling as a mother now where you are and she's 4 years old? And what is that process like for you today?
My daughter is totally living the Pura Vida life. She goes to school on the beach. She's in the water almost every day as well. It's definitely, I am extremely privileged to have been able to, through my integration work, to create a life where I get to spend a lot of time with her. And of course, I'm my own boss and set my own hours. I'm the CEO of my own company. So that means that if in the middle of the day I want to go and do story time at my daughter's preschool, I'm going to go do that and then come back and continue my work or just take her on a horse ride or something like that. But I feel like right now I'm at a good place with accepting myself as a mother and also learning how to make room for her. And when you probably, I'm assuming maybe this is something you can relate to, is that I actually feel that motherhood is like the greatest psychedelic trip of all time. There is an
Absolutely.
ego death in every corner. And literally, this is
Yeah.
another reason why I actually feel like, it's just again, that relationship to my daughter is already so activating that I feel like you said, she's the medicine. She is my medicine. And she brings so much awareness to my life that it's like my life was already so full with awareness and integrating that relationship that I don't need any more awareness right now beyond what this little Buddha teacher is
Right.
providing me.
Right. When you think of like, again, the psychedelic, that soul revealing, and was talking to my daughter the other day about it. I was like, being a mother is the most psychedelic thing. It's the most soul revealing thing you could do in your life. And like you said, it's ego death after ego death.
Nonstop.
And then also the self-care piece, like to not forget about yourself, your sovereignty through it all too. And having time for taking time and even teaching your daughter to take time for the quieting down. And yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. And I do remember when my first daughter was born, she's really the one that introduced me into meditation because the caring of a baby, like that moment, there's it's just presence. It's just you and that baby. And suddenly the whole divine milieu, that space opens up so differently when you're like super present with that child. And it is medicine.
It
Yeah.
is medicine, and in some ways, she's the one that's responsible for my operations in the psychedelic world, because I stepped in because I wanted to learn how to be in a relationship, how to be a better mom. Some of the things that psychedelics have shown me after I gave birth to her, like literally, I learned how to love my daughter through using ketamine. I know that some people
Mm.
may find this really strange, but it was hard for me to relate to my daughter after she was born, as some new mothers experience. And I learned how to be more present for her through my use of psilocybin, through ketamine, showing me all the ways that I've been not taking ownership of my role as a mother, and and actually giving birth to her. This was pre-pandemic. It's all because of her that I decided to open this online school, because up until then I was seeing all of my clients, in the house. And then she was born, and I was thinking, how, I don't have time for all the clients, that maybe I should start teaching groups, maybe I should do it online. So literally I've shifted my business to be operating online because of my child, and this was right
Mhm.
before the pandemic hit. um, and she's called my love in abundance, Myla. So I feel like she literally has introduced me to the
Oh,
abundance that we were experiencing because of our work. And yeah, it's a very humbling experience, very humbling. And as you said yourself, just like the ego death aspect is already so present. So
especially as a mother too. Like I have children that are older than yours, and sometimes I wish I had done psychedelics, before children, and had some of the experiences that highlighted some of the things that were my blind spots that I didn't see. I mean, as you know, psychedelics just shines a light on everything. And I think one of the gifts too, like you said, is you're learning from the wisdom that's actually deep within, but given through maybe sacred plant medicine, attachment styles, parenting, all those things that are part of that everyday relational work with a child, or a partner.
yeah, right, exactly. So I also just want to put out there. So since I
Mm-hmm.
did all these videos on my psychedelic use while I was
Mm-hmm.
pregnant, I
Mm-hmm.
literally filmed those spontaneously a day before I gave birth to her.
Wow.
Never filmed any videos before, just something just in me just wanted to document that. And I put it on YouTube, and people have been asking me to give a report. Well, how did she turn out? How did she come out? Because I never posted any follow-ups on them. And I just literally made a little follow-up video. And I just want to say, and again, this is not medical advice, but my daughter has always been in the 99th percentile for her weight and height. She was talking from a very young age,
Mm-hmm.
super communicative. Everyone says she's very present and very alert, and is like very mature
Mm-hmm.
for who she is. And everyone's, again, of course, no mother is biased at all, but
Yeah.
it's not that they hurt her in any way, at least not that I can see. It's like, it seems like they've absolutely affected her for the better, because she's really just unique and different. And yeah, so the follow up on that is actually like, I don't regret it for one moment. And I'm so glad that I made
Oh,
that choice for myself.
I'll look for that.
Yeah.
Um, do you have anything else before we close? I know you have to go, and it's such a beautiful conversation. I loved hearing about your work, but also you as a mother and the decisions that you've made um, to to pivot a little bit. And
Mhm.
such a beautiful story. Thank you for your vulnerability in what you write, and for really allowing us to see that process.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, the only thing that I would just leave everyone is with, just be brave to meet yourself where you're at,
Mm.
and honor yourself where you're at, and be bold enough and courageous enough to listen first and foremost to your own mission and what you're here to do in the world. I know that this process of individuation is really not for the faint of heart, but gather your community, follow your heart, follow your own lead, follow your own voice, and show us what you got, because we need your medicine right now.